Do you know, Dubai is actually more terrifying than northern Myanmar. Dubai is a hell on earth covered with gold. Behind the luxury of Dubai, there is a creepy secret. My name is Xiao Zhu, an ordinary Chinese teacher. I thought I would marry for love, but I didn't expect to fall into a terrifying experimental trap. If time could go back, I would never set foot on that seemingly rich land. My name is Xiaozu, 25 years old, an ordinary teacher. Mon and I have known each other for a few months. He is more outstanding than any of my ex-boyfriends, whether in appearance, money, or the degree of care for me. He is from Dubai, and I am his Chinese teacher. After I finished teaching him the first month of classes, he generously gave me a Maybach. I was shocked for 3 days. Later, he bought me an extremely rare Savrit necklace at the exhibition, which made me at a loss. Born in an ordinary family, I experienced the so-called celebrity life in just a few months, so he naturally established a boyfriend relationship, and 4 months later, I agreed to his exaggerated proposal that was like more than a dozen helicopters. I think I will become the happiest and richest wife if I marry him. There is no need to hide it. I will generously admit that I like rich and handsome men and admit that I prefer material things over feelings. Mond is very suitable for my appetite, but my parents don't agree that I will go to a strange country with a man I have known for 4 months. They say that women who marry far away will not be happy, and they also say that I don't know Mond well enough. I told Mond about this. He held my hand with affection and told me gently that as long as you miss them, I will send someone to send you back anytime and anywhere. And if I have time, I can bring you and my parents to China to visit your family. Xiaozu, I know that you grew up with them since you were a child. They must be reluctant to let you go if I take you away all of a sudden. They only have you as their daughter, and you are the apple of their eyes. What I can do is to let you meet often and alleviate your longing to a certain extent, okay? After listening to his words, I was more certain that I had chosen the right person, and I resolutely followed him but I never expected that this departure would become the most wrong choice in my life. Dubai, as a world-famous wealthy country, has always been full of infinite revelry. The place where Mon gave me was very luxurious. It was all kinds of luxurious villas that I could only see on the internet, but the doors and windows were all installed with locks. At first I asked what these were for. At that time, I naively suspected that there were thieves in Dubai who made a living by doing this. At that time, Mon smiled meaningfully and told me that the locks were not the people outside the room, not the people outside the room. At first, I didn't understand the sentence, until later when I was imprisoned here by Mond, I suddenly realized that the lock was actually the person in the room. Mond was good at acting and spent a week with me so that I told my parents that I was fine here without any defense, and then I handed my ID card and passport to Mond for safekeeping. On the night I had all this, he disappeared completely after I fell asleep. He didn't marry me, didn't explain to me, and didn't give me even a good piece of clothing except for the magnificent residence. Every day I ate leftovers, and the servants sometimes deliberately didn't give me food. I don't understand what I did wrong to suffer such change. 10 days later, Mond appeared with a woman and a man in a white coat. The woman had a delicate appearance, wore luxurious jewelry, and took Mond's arm. Because my grandfather was German, my bloodline is not the purest Chinese, so my appearance is a bit mixed, and I look about 70 similar to the woman in the red dress in front of me. Who is he? I actually already have the answer in my heart, but I still don't want to let go of myself. I asked Mond. Mond sneered, waved to the white coat, and I was immediately placed on a strange table like a sacrifice, with my limbs forced to point in different directions, and even the angles were not much different. Don't let me go. I struggled desperately, but the fists weren't a match for 4 hands, and I was forced to be fixed on the table by this group of people. The white coat approached me with a dark face and did something in front of me. The cold instrument passed by, and I closed my eyes and burst into tears. I begged Mon to let me go. I didn't want to be with him anymore. He turned a deaf ear to me, walked up to me, grabbed my hair, and pulled it up fiercely. Once it was opened, the former tenderness and affection were full of coldness and strangeness. My wife does not meet the requirements, but I need children. If I find a woman in my country, it will be easy to be exposed. You are the best substitute. You are neither from our country nor have any family background, and you look very similar to Ari. I just looked at him like that, watching him say one knife-like words after another. It turned out that from the beginning I was not the one he wanted to marry, but to bring back as a container. Soon, there was a beep from the white coat, and the gentleman showed no sign. Mon turned his head angrily, his eyes widened. Is there something wrong with him too? When she said this, Ollie's eyes dropped slightly. The white coat shook his head. No, but I have a way to make him cooperate as soon as possible. Then the white coat took out two instruments that I had never seen before, and there was a buzzing sound of electricity. I suddenly remembered an experiment used on animals which relied on electric motors to mate. But I never thought I would witness such a cruel experiment with my own eyes. In my own case, I was locked in this dark cage under the electric shock of the white coat and the critical attack of the instrument. They would always pay attention to my blood pressure and heart pulse, and rely on the motor to force me to constantly enter the best stage of the experiment. At first, I only lasted for more than 10 minutes before fainting. Later, with the infusion of various liquids, I was forced to maintain a clear consciousness for more than an hour. When I woke up again, I only felt the illusion that my body was so painful that I was almost numb. That night when they left, they did not forget to tie me up in the room, hung a pure silver shackle on my ankle, and then did not close the door. In fact, even if I was not tied up, I could not escape. Mon said that he would give me nutritious meals and nurses and others to take care of my diet. The purpose was not for my health, but to make me the best container for the experiment. Every week in the future, I had to lie in bed and receive the terrible treatment of the white coat. I touched my sore stomach and leaned against the wall to beg for mercy, but Mon did not even look at me. The woman next to him glanced at me slightly and said nothing else. After they left, the bedroom fell into silence, and only my weak crying was left in the silence. I hugged my aching body and questioned myself again and again. I don't understand why I am such an unfortunate person. Am I really so unlucky and so unsuitable for a real relationship? Or I have been blinded for a long time. I shouldn't disobey my parents. I shouldn't doubt my biological parents and believe in a man who has only known me for a few months. I am too stupid and naive. I have brought it upon myself and suffered the consequences. At this moment, I was startled by a sudden scream. Is there another woman in this palace? Let me go. Let me out. The woman screamed, accompanied by the sound of glass breaking from time to time. I immediately crawled to the door and stuck my head out. The sound was bottomless. A woman who spoke very standard Chinese came from the end of the corridor. Who is she? Is she the same as me? I was observing carefully, and I saw several servants coming up the stairs with ferocious looks, each holding either an electric baton or a whip in his hand. This scene scared me so much that I quickly retreated and hid in the corner, trembling at the group of servants. They walked past my door and deliberately glared at me, saying, "Be honest." They warned me and then walked towards the woman who was shouting in the corridor today. Soon I heard the sound of sticks hitting, followed by the woman's painful plea for mercy and the servants' abuse induced by language. After about half an hour, the end of the corridor became quiet. The servants came out from the corridor one after another, passing by my door again. I shrank on the bed, hugging myself tightly in fear. At this time, a maid holding a bloody stick stood in front of my door. Her empty eyes were cold and emotional as this. I learned my lesson and didn't have any intersection with him. He will be thrown away by the master soon, understand? I should have nodded obediently, but my brain twitched and I asked who he was. The maid's eyebrows and eyes were crossed, and her face changed instantly. She took a few steps towards me, and I kept moving back in fear. It is a discarded product. If you ask too many questions, the next person to be eliminated will be you. Don't meddle in other people's business, let alone disobey. Sir, did you hear it? I clenched the sheets tightly and knotted like garlic, fearing that he would impatiently hit me with a stick later. Seeing that I didn't say anything more, the maid glared at me and left my room. He closed my door before leaving, and I was relieved. I collapsed and sat on the bed, covering my face and crying. What did he mean? Was the woman considered a discarded product because she couldn't bring a child? But if Mon needed a child, he should have looked for a woman from Dubai, not a Chinese woman. If I was similar to his wife because of my mixed blood, then who is the one at the end of the corridor? I couldn't help but start to doubt that the woman at the end of the corridor and I were not prepared to continue the offspring at all. We were more like an experimental device, and we were alive. Did Mon lie to me? He is so rich. If I want to have a child with a Gani, even if a Gani is infertile, I can do IVF. And he did nothing but chose to go to faraway China and abduct Chinese women to come here. It was really strange. I slowly became sleepy with doubts. Just as I was lying on the bed with my eyes half closed and ready to fall asleep, there was a rustling sound outside the door. I didn't feel safe here, so I woke up instantly and regained consciousness. Who? I asked vigilantly in the darkness. The voice outside the door was very faint. I know you are not asleep, and I also know that you are also a test subject. I can recognize the voice of the woman at the end of the corridor, but what does she mean, test subject? My palms were sweating with nervousness. I got out of bed tentatively and walked to the door carefully. When I was hesitating whether to open the door, the woman's voice appeared again. Don't open the door. Listen to me first and then decide whether to cooperate with me. Don't let the servants find out that I am talking in a long and short way. Just listen to me. His words dispelled my hand that was about to open the door. I put down my arm and looked at the moonlight reflected on the door handle. My heartbeat became louder and louder for no reason. Who are you, Word here? How do you know I exist? When they shocked you today, who didn't hear your screams? You are also a test subject they brought here. You probably don't even know that your room was just dragged away last month. A woman's body was thrown away the night before you came in. The words made my back shiver. I couldn't help but turn my head and see the cold furniture in the dark. My mind was full of thoughts as if the dead woman would appear behind my back at any time. You are afraid. Seeing that I didn't reply for a long time, the woman's gloomy voice sounded again. I took a deep breath and came back to my senses. The test subject is not for Mon's wife, for his wife. After the woman laughed softly a few times, she lowered her voice and told me, when you came to the palace, didn't you see a few unique portraits in the hall? Unique portraits? I closed my eyes and thought carefully. It seemed that when I observed the door lock, I did see a few paintings on the wall. There were some babies in the portraits. It didn't look like babies because those babies had wings or pointed ears, more like little angels in retro Europe. Unfortunately, I didn't look closely, so I couldn't think of an accurate outline at this time. I don't remember it very well. I said so. The woman was silent for a while, and then her voice told me gloomily that every woman who came here was not for a Gani, but we were actually for. Before he could finish, there was a noise outside. A servant shouted something in the hall, which frightened the woman and I so much that we held our breath and stood still. I have to go back. If you want to escape from here, come find me tomorrow night, the woman said, and without waiting for me to speak, she quickly left. I followed closely and heard hurried footsteps, one light and one heavy. I guessed that her foot was injured. Then, before the servant arrived, I immediately returned to the bed and covered myself with the quilt. A few minutes later, the light in the room suddenly came on. I endured the discomfort of the light to prevent my eyelids from twitching and tried to pretend to be asleep. I could feel someone appear at my door. He was walking slowly around my room, scanning my room with suspicion, and finally came to me. I was very nervous and my breathing could not help but slow down. I dared not move my eyelids, but my hands hidden under the quilt trembled involuntarily. When I was a kid, I liked to pretend to sleep to escape my mother's attention. Later, I developed a good skill of pretending to sleep. Even my own mother would be fooled, let alone outsiders. As expected, the maid did not notice that I was abnormal. She turned off the light and closed the door after a few clicks. 10 minutes after she left, I dared to slowly open my eyes. The room was dark and no one was there. I breathed a sigh of relief and wiped the sweat from my nose. After calming down, the woman's words came to my mind again. Yes, I want to leave. Once such an idea appears, it will become deeper and deeper as time goes by. The next evening, the nutritionist in the white coat appeared in my bedroom on time. With them was another person who looked like a researcher. He stood at my bedside with several syringes filled with different liquids to inject me. Even if he injected me with a lethal drug at this time, I couldn't say anything. After doing all this, the white coat took away my deity and prepared to report back to Mon. After they left, I started to feel a dull pain in my stomach. It wasn't my period, nor was it because I had eaten something wrong. I thought it was strange, but I didn't pay much attention to it because I was going a woman. While the servants were sleeping at night, I moved little by little to the middle of the corridor, but I couldn't move because the length of the shackles was the limit. "Are you still there?" I shouted deeply into the darkness. I was afraid that the servants would find me, so I didn't dare to speak loudly. I lowered my voice every time I shouted and kept looking back to see if anyone would appear behind me. Just when I was about to give up, there was a slight sound of a door opening at the end. "I'm here," he said, slowly moving towards me. As he got closer, I could see his appearance clearly in the moonlight, and I was so scared that I almost screamed. Fortunately, I covered my mouth. "Is it scary?" The woman sat in front of me with a big belly. Her whole face was covered with burn scars, and her facial features could no longer be seen. His arms were covered with knife scars of varying sizes. His 2 legs were good, but he walked with a limp. It was not because he was injured, but because he was missing a foot. Yes, the sole of his left foot was completely cut off. He used a thin gold clip to open the shackles on my feet very easily. "This thing can't trap me." I locked them myself during the day and unlocked them at night. He lowered his head as if he was telling me something ordinary. I didn't say anything, sitting in the corridor looking at the shackles that had been unlocked on my feet. "You and I know what you want to ask." He stared at me with his scarred eyes. "You want to ask me why I look like this, right?" Well, I nodded. When I first came, they didn't choose to anesthetize me for the experiment, so I kicked Mon hard, and he chopped off my foot in a rage. The woman said it lightly, as if it was nothing. But when it comes to anesthesia, I seem to be anesthetized because I didn't know anything during that period of time. What did Mon do to me? As for the injuries on my body, they were caused by my complete collapse when I was held down for the 3rd time for the experiment. I set the room on fire myself, trying to let the police see that there was a fire. Unfortunately, they installed the most advanced fire prevention equipment in this house. Only I was almost burned to death, and no one noticed my existence. I felt more and more that something was wrong. What kind of experiment was it? It was an evil experiment that did not meet the bottom line of humanity. The woman stroked her belly. Her tone was so sad. I was about to speak, but I heard the voice of the servant outside and hurriedly told the woman, "Take this well, he can give you freedom." The woman handed me the gold clip. It took me half a year to make it bit by bit. You learn it how to unlock it. Leave through the back door at 12 o'clock tomorrow night. The servants have a shift at 12 o'clock. There will be about 10 minutes in between when no one is there. You can take the opportunity to escape. I held the gold clip tightly undust. "What are you going to do?" The woman stroked her belly and laughed at herself. "In this state, I can't even walk properly, let alone run. If you can leave smoothly, bring the police to rescue me." That night, the woman told me everything she knew and all the clues she had found in the past year, but I still didn't know what experiment was being done here. Another day later, when the white coat came again, he said something strange. The time was almost right. The researcher beside him also nodded. All functions had reached excellent, and he should be able to bear the experiment at this time. They discussed and looked at each other, and then they lifted me up at the same time. I was a piece of meat that could be slaughtered at will, lying on the chopping board without any resistance. The woman's intuition told me that the next experiment was not that simple. So after they left the room, I immediately leaned on the window to look. After making sure that these guys got in the car and left the palace, I looked at the golden clip without saying a word. I wanted to escape, and I had to escape tonight. At 12 o'clock in the middle of the night, I opened one of my sore eyes that was not asleep and groped around in the dark. I took out the golden clip, quietly untied the shackles on my feet, and my feet were free. I stepped on the floor barefoot and looked outside through the crack of the door. It was quiet. I knew this was my chance. I pushed the door open on tiptoe and walked down the stairs at the slowest speed. There was no one in the hall, and several doors were tightly closed. I remembered that there was a lock outside the main door, and all the windows were locked. At this moment, I had to find the back door that the woman told me. I only had 10 minutes, and I couldn't be slow. I sped up my movements, looking for the exit, and almost knocked over the jade vase beside me. Fortunately, I caught it quickly. However, this movement still attracted the attention of the servants. Someone shouted in the room, "What's going on outside?" I was scared and hid behind the goddess statue. This goddess statue was very strange. It had a round belly that just covered my whole body. It was rare to see a goddess statue. This is it. I turned my head to look at the corridor and found that no servants came out. It should be that the servants who were changing shifts had not gotten up yet. I seized this opportunity and hurried to the last passage. This passage really didn't need a password lock. It opened with a push. I thought I had found a way out and cried with joy, covering my mouth for fear of making a cry of surprise. Who knew that when I ran to the end, I didn't see the outside world I imagined, but the original hall. It turned out that this door was not a way out at all, but just another U-shaped door connected to the hall. I collapsed against the door and fell down. What is the most desperate? It is nothing more than being hit hard by reality after having hope. Soon, the voices of servants and one or two car sounds came from outside. I knew that the white coats were coming, and I had to drag my weak body towards the cell on the second floor. If I didn't go back and was found here, my end would be miserable. At the same time, I accidentally looked up and saw the portrait hanging in the hall. The oil painting was clearly visible under the moonlight, but the baby on it was not an angel, but a hybrid monster. The so-called experiment was to use humans for hybridization. I returned to the room in horror and closed the door. Could it be that the time is ripe, as the white coat said, that my body can accept other species? Impossible. I don't want to stay calm like this. I first locked myself in shackles, then sat on the bed and waited quietly. I can't use my body as a gamble, and I must not cultivate monsters in my body. That woman's big belly, could it be that, my God? It turns out that she is not in her belly. A baby, the hybrid monster. In addition to being frightened, my abdomen began to ache again. I covered my lower abdomen and curled up my body. This feeling is very familiar. I hurriedly checked, and sure enough, there was a blood on the bottom of my pants. Great, I'm menstruating, and I can't do the experiment now. Before I could rejoice for long, the white coat pushed open the door, and several people rushed into my room aggressively. Good, people haven't slept yet. We can do our experiment. I hurriedly explained, no, I'm menstruating. They definitely didn't believe it, and they came up and grabbed my arm, dragged me off the bed, controlled my arm, and began to check my body. After they saw the blood under me, they were dumbfounded. Impossible. The time is wrong. He was given medicine, so why did his period come on time? That's your problem. Several people started arguing on shirking responsibility. The doctor was very calm. It's just a few days. Doesn't matter if we wait a little. His eyes were very sharp. He had seen through the fluke in my heart, so he specially arranged for someone to strictly guard my room and never allow me to have the slightest idea of escaping. After they let me go, I quickly got up and watched several people put away the cold technological equipment. My heart was still trembling. It was not until they walked away that I fell on the bed with a sigh of relief. I was almost like that poor woman. Touching my slightly aching belly, I knew that I only had 7 days left. If I didn't leave here within 7 days, I would probably become a container for cultivating monsters. I absolutely didn't want this. Couldn't waste my body in this place. Once I got pregnant, I would probably be inseparable from this place for the rest of my life. I bit my index finger and racked my brains to think of a way to escape. 7 days? What can I do in such a short time? Can I make a thorough plan? Can I leave smoothly? Thinking about the difficulty of these things, I suddenly felt a little desperate. Lying on the bed, I looked at the moon hanging outside the window and told myself that I couldn't just sit there and wait for death. I had to find a chance to ask the woman at the end of the corridor where the way out was. 3 days passed like this. The servant who delivered the food was as cold to me as always. The one who opened the door was even more meticulous, holding a sharp weapon in his hand and a tightly closed cage. I couldn't get out at all. I counted the time anxiously in the room. Maybe God heard my call and made something happen in the palace. That night, the woman deep in the corridor was about to give birth. The sound was extremely miserable. The palace was in chaos. The white coats called several people to go deep into the corridor. I stared at the door vigilantly and listened carefully how the movement outside developed. I had to stop the bleeding quickly and not let the fetus have any problems. They tiptoed barefoot on the floor and peeked at the people outside through the crack in the door. I found that the servants passing by outside the corridor were holding a basin of blood gauze in their arms, praying silently, hoping that he would not die like this. When I go out and call the police, maybe I can still save him. He must wait for me. I kept wandering in the room and wanted to go out to see, but I had no reason. Who knew that they suddenly pushed open my door at this time? What are you going to do? I stepped back in panic, full of defense. They ignored me, grabbed my arm, dragged me out without saying anything, and took me to the room deep in the corridor. Only then did I realize that my room was completely different from this woman's room. Her room was like a petri dish, filled with various bottles and jars. Except for a bed and a toilet, the rest of the place was full of various syringes, and his bed was blood-red, and he was unconscious. Your blood type just matches his. You come to give him a blood transfusion to ensure the smooth progress of the experiment. The white coat's cold tone was as if he was talking about something without any emotion. He waved his hand casually, and his people pressed me on the table to draw blood. I am not afraid of drawing blood, but I am afraid of seeing the birth of a monster with my own eyes. No need to press me. I pushed away the nurses around me, turned my head and stared at the white coat fiercely. I am not a cold-blooded monster. I am willing to save those victims like me. This is a truth that you crazy people will never understand. As I said, I rolled up my sleeves and stretched my arms in front of the doctor. I watched my blood constantly flowing out of my blood vessels and constantly entering the body of the unconscious woman. I was a little worried about whether my blood was enough. After half an hour of rescue, the woman woke up from the coma and screamed in pain. The people in the room began to get busy again. I was left alone. The doctor did not intend to drive me away. Instead, he smiled grimly and said to me, "Take a good look at how great works of art are born." I followed his line of sight and saw a baby's head gradually pouring out of the woman's body as she screamed. Her cry was loud and piercing, and she looked no different from a normal human baby. But when he came out completely, I discovered the horror. The baby had 3 arms, a tail, and deformed shoulder blades. I was horrified. I had never seen such a living monster before, and the woman who had spent all her weapons to give birth to him was also lying on the bed dying. Her face was so disfigured that no expression could be seen, but her scattered eyes were trying to look at me. The doctor was very excited and was overjoyed holding the child. My work was successful, and the gentleman would definitely reward me. After taking photos and videos, the doctor handed the baby to the nurse and asked the nurse to hold it in the swaddle. He excitedly went to the balcony and hugged Mond with a blanket. In a blink of an eye, there was only one servant left in the room who was cleaning. I took the opportunity to walk to the woman's bedside. He smiled tiredly, obviously exhausted. "You must escape and tell everyone the secret here. Otherwise, more poor girls will appear here." The woman's breath was weak, and every word she said seemed to lose an inch of life. He told me the way to escape at the last moment. I was very grateful to him and wanted to cover him with a blanket, but before I could, the doctor came back. "What are you doing?" He stared at me unpointed outside the door and said, "Go back to where you should go." I retracted my hand, took a last look at the woman's eyes, and then left the bloody room. After the woman died, her body was burned in the back garden. Mon came once, not to see the woman, but to see the monster that was born. He was very excited and wanted to hold a banquet for the success of this experiment. That night, the servants locked my door to prevent me from escaping, and they all went to Mon's banquet to celebrate the birth of the monster. But no one knew that I had learned how to pick the lock and open this door with a golden clip. There was no one under the moon. I nervously fled the room and found the entrance to the back door where the woman said, but the entrance was a password lock, and I tried many times but failed. Then I thought of the date of birth of this monster, and with the mentality of giving it a try, I didn't expect it to succeed. I walked forward along the dark corridor, and I couldn't help crying as I walked. I saw the light and the scenery outside the palace. This is the corridor leading directly to the garbage dump. I climbed over the garbage dump and came to the main road, and I finally escaped. In the Chinese embassy, I told the people in the embassy about my experience one by one, and most of them didn't believe me. When I took them to Mon Palace, there was no one in the palace, and the bodies that were originally burned in the garden were gone, and even the police dogs came and found nothing. I even suspected that I had a nightmare, and the dream was so real. Half a year later, I settled down in a city in China and lived with my parents. One day on the way home from get off work, I saw a young girl dressed up standing at the intersection. The breath of love could be seen at a glance, and I couldn't help but envy her. But because of what happened half a year ago, I dare not approach men anymore. 10 minutes later, my bus came and the girl's boyfriend came too. I saw that her boyfriend was driving a Lamborghini, which was rare in the city, so I took a closer look. The door opened and the girl happily got on. The car drove away from me, and in just a moment I saw the man in the driver's seat. My muscles were instantly paralyzed and my whole body was stiff. I will never forget that person in my life. He is Mont. How dare he come to China? If nothing unexpected happens, he will definitely repeat the same trick and continue to use Chinese women for terrible experiments. I immediately called the police. When the police arrived, they found that the girl had been drugged and was almost taken to Dubai by Mond. As for Mond, he didn't have time to escape and was captured. Mond stared at me in shock. "You are still alive." "Of course I am alive. Even though everyone said I had a nightmare and that I had mental problems, I believe in myself. I took out the gold clip I had been wearing for half a year. What I have experienced is true. I really regret not killing you." I smiled coldly. "What, don't you have enough monsters?"